I turned 70 last March, though I don't feel 70. Not in the mornings, anyway. Mornings are still mine, quiet, deliberate, predictable. I wake at 6:15, pour coffee into the same chipped mug I've had since my wife, Margaret, bought it at a garage sale in '89, and sit by the kitchen window where the sun catches the dust like gold. That morning started like all the others, until I saw the envelope. It was thin, white, official-looking, tucked between a grocery flyer and a bill from an electric company. The return address said Blue Horizon Medical Insurance. I frowned. I hadn't heard from them in years, not since my daughter Emily insisted on taking care of all the paperwork after Margaret died. I slit the envelope open with the dull edge of my butter knife. Dear Mr. Peterson, we regret to inform you that your medical coverage has been terminated effective March 1st due to voluntary cancellation. Please contact your plan administrator for details. Voluntary cancellation. My heart thudded once hard, like an engine missing a beat. I reread the sentence twice, tracing it with my finger. There had to be some mistake. My premiums were paid automatically, deducted from my pension. Emily handled that too, so you don't have to bother with online logins, she'd said. I reached for the phone, then stopped. My hands were shaking. I hadn't even finished my coffee. Instead, I sat there for a while, staring at the sunlight spilling over the counter, thinking how small a betrayal can look on paper. Just ink, a few sentences, but they rearrange your world. At 9:37, my phone rang. Emily, Dad. Her voice was too cheerful, stretched tight, like wrapping paper over a box that doesn't quite fit. How are you feeling this morning? I was fine, I said slowly, until I got a letter saying my health insurance was canceled. There was a pause, then a quick laugh that didn't sound like laughter at all. Oh, that? Don't worry. It's just temporary. The plan was getting too expensive, so I switched providers. You'll be back on next month. I don't remember agreeing to that. Oh, Dad, she said, her tone shifting into that sing-song patience she used with her kids. You always said you trust me with this stuff. You don't want to deal with all that online nonsense, remember? I trusted you, I corrected. Another pause, longer this time. Then the sound of her sigh through the receiver. Anyway, speaking of which, I wanted to ask you something. Of course she did. There's always something before the truth. What is it? Well, you know the nanny? She's taking a leave for surgery, just for a few weeks. Could you help out with the kids after school? I'll drop them off at your place around 3. Pick them up around 8. They love being with you, Dad. Is this for a few days? Maybe 2 or 3 weeks. We'll see. You're retired. It'll give you something to do. I let that hang in the air. Something to do. Like my days were hollow spaces waiting for her to fill. Sure, I said finally. I'll do it. Her relief was instant, bright, almost childlike. You're the best. Oh, and could you make sure to have some almond milk? Tyler's allergic to regular now. She hung up before I could ask what temporary really meant. I sat back, listening to the silence that always follows her calls. My kitchen clock ticked, steady and unbothered. The sunlight had shifted higher, bleaching the letter until the words blurred into white. For a long moment, I just sat there, a man with canceled insurance and unexpected grandchildren on the way. And somewhere beneath the numbness, something small and sharp began to move. Not anger yet, not even suspicion. Just a quiet realization that maybe I wasn't the one being taken care of anymore. Maybe I was the one being managed. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I didn't bother making coffee. The taste had turned sour in my mouth since yesterday. The insurance letter sat on the counter beside a small stack of unpaid bills, looking almost smug in the early light. I decided to drive down to the bank. It had been years since I'd gone in person. These days, everything's done with apps or screens, but I still prefer a real handshake and a paper receipt. The tellers know me there, or used to. At 9:02 sharp, I parked my old Ford by the cracked curb outside First State Credit Union. The air smelled faintly of rain and exhaust. Inside, it was all glass and polished wood, the kind of clean that feels artificial. "Good morning, Mr. Peterson," said the young woman behind the counter. New face, new name tag. "How can I help you today?" I slid my debit card across the counter. "I'd like to review recent withdrawals from my pension account, and also something about my insurance payments." "Of course." She smiled politely and began typing. Her nails clicked against the keyboard like a metronome. "Can you confirm your daughter Emily still has access as your cosigner?" I blinked. "Cosigner?" "Yes, she's listed as secondary on this account. Power of attorney added last November." A coldness spread through my chest. I hadn't signed anything in November. I was in the hospital that month for my hip checkup. Emily had filled out most of the paperwork to save me the trouble. The teller's eyes flicked over the screen. There was a withdrawal on February 14th, $6,200, marked as a transfer to Haven and Hearth Hospitality, LLC. "Does that sound familiar?" "No," I said too quickly. She hesitated. "It was authorized online." "By whom?" "By the secondary account holder." I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Thank you, dear. That's all I needed." I walked out into the parking lot with that name, Haven and Hearth Hospitality, echoing in my mind. The air felt thicker somehow, like walking underwater. My hands shook as I unlocked the truck door. $6,200. Not a random number. Not some clerical mistake. Emily's husband, Greg, had been talking for months about opening a restaurant. Family investment, he called it. An opportunity to build something real. I remember nodding politely, thinking he sounded like every man who thinks debt is a personality trait. I drove home slowly, past the same gray houses, the same peeling fences, the same people walking dogs I didn't look at. The world kept moving as if nothing had changed, but everything had. At home, I checked my kitchen drawer, the one where I kept old documents and letters. I found the insurance envelope again, spread it flat on the table, and read every line. Voluntary cancellation. Plan administrator. Emily R. Sutton. It wasn't a mistake. It was her signature, neat and confident. Under the date, January 28th. I stared at it for a long time. Not just the letters, but the audacity of them. Then I picked up the phone and called her. It rang 4 times before she answered. "Hey, Dad, I'm at work. Can I call you later?" "It won't take long," I said evenly. I stopped by the bank. They said there was a withdrawal. Over $6,000. "Do you know anything about that?" Silence. The kind that hums in your ear. Finally. "Oh, that? Yeah. Greg might have used a joint account for some startup costs. But don't worry, it's temporary. You'll get it back." I didn't give him permission. She sighed, exasperated, like I was a stubborn child. "Dad, it's all the same family money. You don't even touch most of that pension. We're just trying to make the restaurant work. Once it's running, you'll have free meals for life. I'd rather have my insurance." Another pause, sharper this time. "Don't make this into a big deal. You always said we could rely on you." I said you could rely on me, Emily, not on my account. "Dad, please." Her voice softened, or tried to. "You're overthinking this. Just trust me, okay? We'll fix everything soon. Anyway, I've got a meeting. Can we talk later?" She hung up before I could answer. I set the phone down carefully. For a moment, the room was perfectly still. Then I let out a laugh, low, bitter, almost foreign to my own ears. Trust. That word again. I had given her trust like a gift card with no expiration date, and she'd spent it on convenience. I sat there for a long while listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock, the distant sound of rain against the roof. The house felt smaller now, too quiet. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in the dark, watching the ceiling fan turn slow circles overhead, and tried to remember when Emily had stopped asking permission and started assuming ownership. Maybe it happened gradually, one bill at a time, one signature at a time. Maybe I'd been too grateful for her help to notice the leash tightening. But now, with 6,000 missing and no insurance to my name, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had crossed the line, and I wasn't going to pretend I didn't see it. They arrived on a Thursday afternoon, right on schedule. Emily's SUV rolling into my driveway like a parade float, polished and humming. The back seat was a blur of car seats, snack wrappers, and restless little feet. "Dad," she called brightly as she stepped out, sunglasses perched on her head, that corporate confidence glued to her every movement. "Thank you again for helping out. We've just been drowning lately." I smiled thinly and wiped my hands on the dish towel, always happy to see my grandkids. Her husband Greg followed, balancing a tablet in one hand and a Starbucks cup in the other. He didn't bother to look up. "We'll be late tonight. Investor dinner. Restaurant stuff." "Of course," I said. "I hope the investors are generous." He blinked, uncertain whether I meant that sincerely. I didn't bother clarifying. The kids tumbled inside, little Tyler clutching his tablet, 7-year-old Hannah carrying a pink backpack, nearly as big as she was. They filled the house with a kind of noise I hadn't heard in years. Cartoon jingles, giggles, the thud of sneakers on the wood floor. It felt alive again, briefly achingly alive. Emily stood in the doorway, one hand on her hip, surveying my living room like an inspector. "Dad, the Wi-Fi password's still the same, right?" "Oh, and I brought almond milk and Tyler snacks. Please don't give him dairy. And make sure they're in bed by 8. "Oh, and Greg will send you the schedule for next week. Just text if you need anything." "Okay." I opened my mouth. "Emily, before you go." She cut me off with that smile she uses when she doesn't plan on listening. "Love you. You're the best." She kissed the air near my cheek, then vanished through the door, Greg close behind. Their tires crunched down the driveway. The sound faded. I exhaled slowly and looked at the kids. Hannah was already unpacking crayons on the coffee table. Tyler had found the remote. "All right," I said softly. "Let's see what trouble we can make." The first few days passed quietly. I cooked, helped with homework, taught Hannah how to make pancakes on Sunday morning. She said I was better than Mom's babysitter. I pretended not to feel the sting behind the compliment. In the evenings, after they'd gone home, I'd sit in the dark kitchen with a glass of warm milk, trying to ignore the emptiness of the house. Emily never stayed to chat. She'd drop off, pick up, and vanish in a flurry of schedules and excuses. By the 5th day, the fatigue set in, not from the kids, but from pretending everything was fine. Tuesday afternoon, while folding their laundry, I heard the sound of my daughter's voice drifting in from the open window. She was on the phone, standing outside near the car. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but her tone made me freeze. "Yes, the transfer went through," she was saying. "He has no idea. He thinks the insurance thing is just paperwork. Greg, relax. We needed the capital. Once the restaurant opens, we'll pay him back." A pause, then her laugh, sharp, nervous. "No, he won't ask questions. He's too proud to admit he doesn't understand all this stuff." The blood in my veins turned cold. I stepped closer to the window, heart hammering. "Besides," she went on, "it's not like he needs the insurance. He barely leaves the house. You're overthinking this, honey. Just focus on the grand opening." "Okay, see you tonight." The call ended. Her car door shut. The engine started, and she drove off. I stood there for a long time, the folded towel in my hands, staring at the sunlight on the linoleum. He has no idea. He doesn't need the insurance. I felt something inside me tighten, a wire stretched too long, ready to snap. That evening I cooked mac and cheese for the kids, a box kind, the same brand Emily used to beg for when she was 8. The smell filled the kitchen with nostalgia, so heavy it almost hurt. Hannah sat at the table, coloring. "Mom says he used to fix airplanes," she said suddenly. "Engines," I corrected gently. "Not airplanes, but close enough." "Did you like it?" I thought about the years. Long hours, burnt coffee, frozen mornings at the hangar. It wasn't about liking it. It was about doing it right. She nodded solemnly, then whispered, "Mom says you forget things now." The fork froze in my hand. Does she? She said you shouldn't drive far. 'Cause sometimes old people forget where they're going. I forced a smile. Well, good thing I'm not old yet. She giggled and went back to coloring. But inside, the wire pulled tighter. Later that night, after they'd gone home, I sat in my armchair with my old notebook open on my lap. I started writing dates, the cancellation notice, the bank withdrawal, the overheard call. I wrote everything down in neat, cramped letters, the way I used to record maintenance logs at work. Old habits die hard. Documentation keeps the world honest. At 10:12 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "Thanks again for today. Could you watch them Friday too? We'll be out late for the investor dinner. Love you. Red heart." I typed slowly. "Sure. Always happy to help. By the way, what's the name of the restaurant again?" She replied instantly. "Haven and Hearth." Cute, right? "I'll send you the link once the website's live." I stared at the screen, at those words that now had weight. Haven and Hearth. The same name printed on my bank statement. Cute indeed. The next morning, I went about my routine like nothing had changed. But something had. I moved slower, quieter. My eyes noticing details they'd glossed over before. The way Emily never asked if I needed groceries. How she always parked facing the street, ready to leave fast. When she dropped the kids off again, she stood in the doorway, chatting about nothing, pretending everything was normal. "Dad, you look tired," she said lightly. "Are you sure this isn't too much for you?" I looked at her, really looked at her. The pressed blazer, the manicured nails, the faint glimmer of guilt she was trying to bury under confidence. "No, sweetheart," I said, smiling faintly. "I'm fine. I've been through worse." She laughed, kissed the air again, and drove away. As the car disappeared down the street, I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling the stillness settle around me like armor. Let her think I was harmless. Let her think I was slow, old, naive. Because for the first time in a long while, I wasn't confused. I was focused. And she was about to learn that I still knew how to fix things. I've always believed that silence is the most powerful tool a man can use. The world expects old men to complain, to bark about kids these days, to whine about money and pills. So when an old man goes quiet, people stop looking at him altogether. That's when he can finally see everything. The morning after that last babysitting shift, I brewed a pot of coffee and opened the drawer where I kept Margaret's old file folders, the ones labeled neatly in her handwriting. Taxes 2010 to 2015, insurance, pension, MISC. I spread everything on the kitchen table like a detective. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the slow ticking of the wall clock. First, the insurance letter again. January 28th. Cancellation signed by Emily R. Sutton. Then the bank statement with that Haven and Hearth Hospitality LLC transfer, dated February 14th. 2 dots on a map. I needed a line between them. I spent the next 3 hours on hold with the insurance company, bouncing from one polite operator to another until I reached someone named Claudine, who actually sounded human. "Yes, sir. I see here that the account was terminated at the request of your plan administrator. Can you tell me who that was?" One moment, I could hear her typing. The faint click of nails on plastic. "It says the administrator was your authorized representative, Emily Sutton. The request was submitted electronically from her verified email. There's an attached document. Looks like a digital signature authorization dated November 17th. November 17th. The same month I was in the hospital for my hip checkup. Can you send me a copy of that form?" She hesitated. "I can mail it to the address we have on file." "That'll do," I said quietly. "Thank you, Claudine." I hung up, staring at the notepad where I'd written the date. November 17th. My daughter had used my hospital stay as an opportunity to take control of my finances. She probably thought I wouldn't remember signing anything between the morphine and the discharge papers. But I do remember. I remember her sitting beside my bed, smiling too much, holding clipboard. Just insurance forms, Dad. Routine. My throat tightened. At noon I drove to the public library, the one place she'd never think to look for me. I signed up for computer time and typed the company name. Haven and Hearth Hospitality, LLC. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was a corporation registered 2 months ago, with Gregory Sutton listed as managing partner and Emily Sutton as co-owner. The startup capital? $48,000. $48,000. My heart pounded as I scrolled further. There it was, the business address, the projected grand opening date, and a smiling picture of Greg in front of a coming soon banner. He looked like a man who believed the world owed him dessert before dinner. And there, at the bottom of the article, a single line of text, funded by a generous private investor. I printed everything, the registration, the press clipping, even the picture. The printer spat out the pages one by one, the scent of hot toner filling the air like iron. On my way out, I stopped by the bulletin board and took a business card from a local attorney pinned between yoga for seniors and learn to crochet. Thomas Keegan, attorney at law, estate, fraud and elder protection that IT seemed poetic. His office smelled of lemon polish and paper. Thomas was in his 50s, brisk and direct, with the same calm energy I used to see in men who knew where every wire ran under a control panel. He listened without interrupting as I laid out the details, the canceled insurance, the bank transfer, the digital signature, the overheard conversation. I placed the papers before him one by one like evidence in a courtroom. When I finished, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. Mr. Peterson, what your daughter did is potentially criminal. Financial exploitation of a dependent adult, unauthorized use of power of attorney, and possibly identity fraud, depending on how she accessed your insurance account. Dependent adult, I repeated with a grim smile. That's what I am now. On paper, he said carefully, but on paper. You also own every cent of that pension. And if we handle this correctly, you'll keep it and maybe teach them a lesson. What do you suggest? First, documentation. Keep every email, every message. Don't confront her yet. People like your daughter only tell the truth when they think they're safe. We'll build the case quietly. And when the time comes, he smiled slightly, then you give her the shock of her life. That evening back at home, I sat in my recliner with the folder open on my lap. The street outside was quiet, the air thick with the smell of summer rain. I thought about Margaret, as she used to warn me, don't give Emily too much control. She'll take the whole steering wheel if you let her. I used to laugh and say, she's our daughter, not a stranger. Now I wasn't sure there was much difference. I stared at the folder, the stack of evidence growing like sediment at the bottom of a river. Insurance papers, bank statements, corporate filings. I added one more sheet, a printed copy of our text messages about the restaurant. At the top of the page, I wrote in neat block letters, the cost of trust. Then I slipped everything into a large manila envelope, sealed it, and wrote Thomas Keegan's name on the front. When I was done, I sat back and watched the rain slide down the window, slow and steady. Emily thought she was clever, thought her father was an old man too proud to notice numbers missing from his account. Let her think that, because sometimes the best revenge doesn't come from rage. It comes from patience, the kind you learn after a lifetime of tightening bolts until they don't move anymore. And I intended to make sure nothing in her world moved again without hearing it creak. By the time her husband's birthday rolled around, I had everything ready. Not in the way Emily meant when she said, "Dad, could you bring a casserole?" But ready in the deeper sense, the kind that settles behind your ribs like quiet thunder. Thomas, my lawyer, had finished the paperwork 3 days earlier. Complaint letters, notarized copies, certified statements. He'd advised me to wait until after the dinner. You'll want witnesses, Mr. Peterson. Family makes the best audience. I'd smiled. Oh, I know. Saturday evening came dressed in polite weather. That bland spring sunshine that makes people believe life is orderly. I drove to their house in my old Ford. The envelope riding shotgun beside me like a silent accomplice. The Suttons lived in the kind of suburb where the trees looked imported and every mailbox matched. Their house glowed warm behind tall windows, laughter spilling out before I even reached the door. Emily opened it, radiant and rehearsed. Dad, you made it. Wouldn't miss Greg's big day, I said, holding up a box of wine from my pantry. Vintage 2016. Good year for cheap decisions. She laughed, not catching the edge of my tone, and ushered me inside. The dining room gleamed. White plates, crystal glasses, candles that smelled like vanilla arrogance. Greg was already holding court at the head of a table, booming about the soft launch and brand positioning. Dad, he said, clapping my shoulder with a confidence that wasn't earned. Glad you could join us. We were just talking about the restaurant investors. Oh, I took my seat slowly. Must be nice to have that kind of backing. Greg grinned, teeth white enough to advertise toothpaste. We've been blessed, honestly. Family support goes a long way. I nodded. It certainly does. Emily shot me a cautious look. The first sign she felt the shift in the air. Dinner unfolded like a play everyone had rehearsed except me. There was roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, red wine that cost more than my monthly utilities. I let them talk about projections, marketing, influencers, until the conversation began to circle toward money. Greg leaned back, patting his stomach. You know, Dad, maybe next time you can come by the restaurant. We'll show you what your little investment helped build. I set my fork down. Investment? He chuckled. Well, technically Emily handled the details, but Greg, she cut in, her smile stiffening. Let's not bore Dad with business talk. Oh, I'm not bored, I said. In fact, I've been very interested lately, especially in where my money's been going. The table went silent. Across from me, their daughter Hannah stared, her fork suspended midair. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope. Thick, heavy, deliberate. I laid it gently beside my plate. Emily's eyes followed it like prey, following a trap. What's that? She asked too quickly. Just some light reading. I opened it and began sliding the papers out one by one. Bank records, insurance correspondence, business registrations. Funny thing, though they all have the same names. Dad, let's not do this here, she whispered. I think yours perfect, I said calmly. You canceled my medical insurance in January. You transferred $6,000 from my pension in February. And by March, you were co-owner of Haven and Hearth Hospitality, LLC. Greg's mouth opened, then closed. Now hold on. No, you hold on. My voice rose, not in anger, but in clarity, the kind that cuts through polite noise. You used my money and my signature while I was in a hospital bed. You forged authorization documents and called it family support. You built your restaurant on theft. Emily's face drained of color. Dad, please, it wasn't like that. Oh, it was exactly like that. I slid another document across the table. The notarized complaint form with Thomas Keegan's signature. Filed this morning. The authorities will decide what it was. Greg's chair scraped against the floor. You called a lawyer? I called 3, I said. 1 for the bank, 1 for the insurance board, and 1 for the state auditor's office. They'll all want to hear how my daughter canceled her father's coverage to fund her husband's vanity project. Emily's hand trembled as she reached for her glass. Dad, we didn't mean... Didn't mean what? To get caught. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the wall clock above the mantel. Finally, Emily's voice broke. You're ruining everything. We're family. I leaned back, studying her face, my daughter's face, the same one that used to grin at me from the front seat of our old station wagon after softball games. "No, Emily," I said softly. "You ruined family when you decided my life was worth less than your restaurant." Her lip trembled. "Dad, please." "You canceled my insurance," I said quietly. "Now I've canceled your protection." I gathered the papers back into the envelope and stood. Dinner was lovely. You can send my Tupperware when you find the time. And before anyone could stop me, I turned and walked out. The evening air was cool and sharp, carrying the faint scent of their roses. I stood by my truck for a moment, watching the lights flicker inside the house, voices rising, Greg shouting, Emily crying. Then I started the engine and drove away, the headlights cutting through the darkness like a promise. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "Please, Dad, can we fix this?" I typed one reply, "Fixing it already, one step at a time." Then I turned the phone face down on the seat and drove on. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace, a quiet, solid kind of peace that didn't need forgiveness or apology. They had wanted to manage me. They had forgotten who taught them how to build, how to calculate, how to stand their ground. They'd remember now. 3 months have passed since that dinner. Enough time for the shouting to fade into silence, for lawyers to start using words like settlement and liability, and for me to remember how it feels to breathe without waiting for someone to take something from me. The days are quieter now, not empty, just clean. The morning after the confrontation, Thomas called to confirm what I already suspected. The state had Frozen Haven and Hearts accounts pending investigation. "They'll find more than they can stomach," he said dryly. "Greg used your pension funds as seed capital, but he never disclosed that to the investors. That's fraud in capital letters." I didn't feel joy when I heard it, just an odd, cool satisfaction, like watching a machine finally shut down after months of malfunctioning. Within 2 weeks, Greg's restaurant had closed before it opened. The investors sued. The bank repossessed their leased equipment. Even the coming soon banner was gone, torn away by wind and irony. Emily called once, maybe twice. The first time to beg, the second to blame. She said I'd ruined their lives. I told her I'd merely stopped funding them. She hung up after that. I haven't heard her voice since. The insurance company reinstated my policy after reviewing the documentation. Thomas saw to it that the stolen funds were repaid in installments, garnished directly from the Suttons' joint account. He asked if I wanted to press criminal charges. "No," I said. "I don't need her in prison. I just need her to remember who she stole from." He nodded. "That's often the harsher sentence." I'm not sure if he's right, but it sounds true enough. Life resumed its modest rhythm. I started tending the backyard again. The tomato vines Margaret used to fuss over. The bird bath, she said, was for beauty, not for birds. I fixed the loose fence post, repainted the porch railing. My hands remembered how to do honest work. And every afternoon around 4, I'd hear the sound of laughter coming from next door. The neighbors' kids shrieking over some sprinkler game. It was the same laughter that used to fill my living room, a sound I missed more than I wanted to admit. So when Emily's message arrived one quiet Friday morning, tentative, brief, it caught me off guard. "Dad, the kids miss you. Could we stop by?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back, "Just them. Saturday, noon." They came right on time. Hannah ran up the porch steps first, her pigtails bouncing. Tyler followed, carrying a paper bag of cookies. "Grandpa," she shouted, throwing her arms around me. "Mom said you were mad." I smiled, patting her shoulder gently. "Mad? No, sweetheart, just disappointed." She tilted her head, frowning in confusion the way children do when adults talk in riddles. "Mom says we can't go to the restaurant anymore. It's gone." "I heard," I said. "That's what happens when people build things on someone else's foundation. They crumble." She nodded, though she didn't understand. "That's all right, one day she will." We spent the afternoon in the backyard. I showed them how to plant tomato seeds, how to press the soil gently but firmly. Hannah got dirt on her nose and laughed until she hiccuped. Tyler found a ladybug and insisted it was a sign of good luck. When the sun began to dip low, I sat on the porch steps, 2 glasses of lemonade sweating beside me, and watched them chase each other across the lawn. For a moment, I forgot the bitterness, the betrayal, the paperwork. I saw only the small hands of children, my blood, still unspoiled by greed. Emily pulled up just as the sky turned the color of ash. She didn't get out of the car, just lowered the window halfway. "Dad," she said softly, "thank you for seeing them." I nodded. "They miss you," she went on. "So do I." Her voice cracked on that last part, the way it used to when she was small and scared. I said nothing. The silence between us wasn't cruel anymore. It was honest. "I'm trying to fix things," she said after a moment. "I really am." "I hope you do," I replied. "But fixing things starts with not breaking them again." She blinked, nodded once, and drove away. The taillights disappeared down the road, leaving only the hum of cicadas and the distant laughter of my grandchildren. Later that night, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, the house wrapped in quiet. The manila envelope, thinner now its purpose fulfilled, lay beside me. I could have thrown away, but I didn't. Some records are worth keeping, not for vengeance, but as proof that you finally stood up. On the table sat one of Hannah's drawings from earlier that day. Me, with a watering can and 2 smiling stick figures beside the tomato plants. Above it, in uneven crayon letters, "Grandpa fixes things." I looked at it for a long time. Then I smiled, small, tired, real. She didn't know how true that was. I took a slow sip of tea, savoring the quiet. People think the hardest part of growing old is loneliness. It's not. It's watching the ones you raised forget what you taught them, until life reminds them the hard way. But tonight, I wasn't angry anymore, just certain, because some lessons, no matter how late they're learned, still count. And some debts, no matter how long they take to collect, still get paid. I turned off the light, the drawing still on the table, and whispered into the dark, "Yes, Hannah, Grandpa fixes things." And I closed the door behind me. And finally it stayed closed.